Welcome to Exploring Early Music. I'm Max Ramage, and today we're talking about the origins of instrumental music. What instruments did people use in antiquity and the Middle Ages, and what sort of music did they play? For much of Western history, instruments were subservient to the voice, and it's only fairly recently that instrumental music has attained a level of prestige comparable to vocal works. In ancient Greece, the most important instrument was the lyre. It was said to be Apollo's instrument. This is a plucked instrument that typically has 7 strings, and its construction is distinct from both a harp and a lute. The lyre was generally used to accompany a singer of poetry. The lyre would simply double the sung melody. There might be a few added ornaments, but the lyre basically copied the singer. In special cases, however, the lyre was used as a solo instrument without vocals. The Greek geographer Pausanias informs us that competitive solo lyre playing was introduced as an event at the Pythian Games in 558 BC, and the first champion was one Agelaus of Tegea. Not everyone was a fan of solo lyre music, though. Plato bewails how the poets rudely sunder rhythm and gesture from tune, putting tuneless words into meter, or leaving time and rhythm without words, and using the bare sound of lyre or flute, wherein it is almost impossible to understand what is intended by this wordless rhythm and harmony. Plato was particularly repulsed by the virtuosic displays that solo instrumental performance occasioned. The most significant ancient Greek wind instrument was the aulos. This was a double reed instrument, like the modern oboe. Normally, the aulos player would play 2 auloi at the same time, a technique that must have required considerable dexterity and training. It's possibly for this reason that Plato says that aulos music tries to find the pitch of each note as it is produced by guess, so that the amount of uncertainty mixed up in it is great and the amount of certainty small. In a treatise called On the Sublime, we read, "Does not the aulos, for instance, induce certain emotions in those who hear it? Does it not seem to carry them away and fill them with divine frenzy? It sets a particular rhythmic movement and forces them to move in rhythm." In the Politics, Plato's pupil Aristotle had something less than positive to say about the aulos. The aulos is not a moralizing, but rather an exciting influence. In Sparta, a certain chorus leader played the aulos to his chorus himself, and at Athens it became so fashionable that almost the majority of freemen went in for aulos playing. But later on, it came to be disapproved of, as a result of actual experience, when men were more capable of judging what music conduced to virtue and what did not. Although Aristotle is pretty negative toward the aulos, his statement does reveal that aulos playing was at one point a popular pastime among the Greeks. Notably, ancient Greece also witnessed the invention of the organ, which would take on great importance in the Middle Ages. The Greek organ, invented by Ctesibius, was hydraulic. It used the power of water to drive air through the pipes and produce sound. Later organs, however, used bellows. They were pneumatic rather than hydraulic. These pneumatic organs eventually made their way from Byzantium to Western Europe in the 700s AD. In the Middle Ages, instrumental music was secular, not liturgical, with the exception of church organs and bells. Even in secular music, instruments were subordinate to the voice. Those medieval aristocrats who chose to practice music generally sang rather than played, and if they did play, they played string instruments rather than winds, for wind instruments were held to distort the facial features in an undesirable way. Even the romantic troubadour songs, which, according to popular cliché, were accompanied by lute or some similar instrument, were in fact normally sung without instrumental accompaniment. However, medieval Europe also supported a class of professional instrumentalists. In the Middle Ages, these secular instrumental musicians generally had multiple skills. They could be jesters, mimes, fire eaters, dancers, and so forth. These jongleurs, as they were known, were truly jacks of all trades. Frequently, the music they performed was dance music, serving as accompaniment to dancers. A characteristic medieval instrumentation was the pipe and tabor, the tabor being a small drum. One musician would simultaneously play the flute and drum. Other medieval instruments included trumpets and horns, the psaltery, a type of zither, and the rebec, a kind of cross between a lute, a lyre, and a fiddle. On other occasions, instrumental music was valued as a creator of background ambiance. In these situations, the instrumentalist would play pieces that were originally written for voices. Two early notated sources of instrumental music are the Robertsbridge Codex from circa 1330 and the Faenza Codex from the early 1400s. Most of the pieces in these collections are transcriptions of vocal music. As mentioned earlier, instruments were mostly absent from religious music in medieval times. However, as early as the 15th century, we have records of the organ being used in alternation with the choir in liturgical services. The organ would play embellished versions of plain chant phrases, and the choir would answer with normal chant singing. Also dating from the 15th century are the earliest known sources of notated music written specifically for instrumental ensembles, that is, groups of instruments. Over the course of the 2 centuries from 1400 to 1600, instrumental music gradually became more prominent in Western culture. In earlier times, the role of instruments had been mostly restricted to accompaniment to singers. In the 15th and 16th centuries, however, we start to encounter totally instrumental performances, without singers. First, we find that instrumentalists co-opted songs intended for dancing, such that they would perform dance music without any sung vocals. They also broadened their focus to include various other sorts of vocal music, adapting pre-existing vocal works for instrumental performance. The last stage in the evolution was the creation of original works that were designed for instruments from the start. These instrumental works were often written for groups known as consorts of particular instruments. Consorts were collections of different sizes of a specific instrument. For example, you could have a consort of recorders, which consisted of several recorders of different sizes, from treble to bass. This use of consorts in instrumental music may have been an attempt to imitate the sonic homogeneity of choir music, a genre that enjoyed great prestige in the Renaissance. Another noteworthy feature of Renaissance music was its emphasis of wind instruments. In contrast to the later Baroque period, which focused on string instruments, the Renaissance had a marked fascination with the woodwind and brass families. The 16th century witnessed an explosion of variety in instrument making, a variety that has never been equaled since. In addition, the cultured class of 16th century Europe appreciated musical instruments not just as producers of sound, but as visually pleasing objets d'art. For example, a harpsichord made in 1560 has written on it the sentence, "I please the eyes and the heart at the same time." In the Baroque era, which is generally considered to have begun around 1600, violins supplanted the older bowed instruments known as viols. The selling point of the violin was its louder volume. Its ability to produce strong accents made it well suited to emotional music, which was a preoccupation of early Baroque opera composers. In France, violins were assembled in force to accompany the aristocratic ballet de cour, lavish spectacles that combined dancing, singing, instrumental music, and pageantry. Next time, we'll talk about historically informed performance. Until then, happy listening.